Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Easy English Spark. I'm so excited to have you here today. If you're ready to improve your English listening and speaking skills, build confidence, and enjoy learning through fun and engaging stories, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into a thrilling mystery set in an old manor called Blackwood Hall. Over the next chapters, you'll follow the adventure, meet intriguing characters, and uncover secrets, all while practicing your English in a natural, exciting way. So, get comfortable, listen carefully, and let's light up your English journey together with this captivating story. Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Storm Approaches. The rain had just begun when we set out. Soft at first, it quickly grew into a steady downpour, drumming against the car windows like a warning. I sat quietly, watching raindrops race each other as they slipped down the glass. Outside, the sky was heavy and gray, filled with thick clouds that threatened a storm. My mother, Claire, kept her eyes fixed on the narrow road ahead, her hands steady on the wheel but her expression tense. "We need to find a town soon," she said, reaching into the glove box for a folded map. "I don't want to run out of fuel before the storm hits." I unfolded the map and traced the route with my finger. "Glenford is just a few miles away," I said. "And then after that, we turn at Redwick." Claire nodded. "Good. Let's make it there before the weather gets worse." The road twisted and climbed through dark woods, tall trees bending under the wind. The headlights barely cut through. The thickening mist and the rain grew heavier, turning the world outside into a blur of gray and green. I felt a strange chill, not just from the cold, but from the feeling that we were entering a place forgotten by time. "Do you remember the last time we came here?" I asked, breaking the silence. "My 10th birthday," Claire replied with a soft smile. "We visited Blackwood Manor back then. It was full of life. Tourists, gardens, laughter. Now it's quiet, almost abandoned." The car followed a sharp curve. The narrow road bordered on one side by a steep drop and on the other by dense forest. Lightning flashed across the sky, briefly lighting up the twisted branches. Thunder rumbled in the distance. "The storm's coming faster than I thought," Claire said, her voice calm but serious. Up ahead, I spotted the faint glow of lights, a small village nestled in the rain. "There's Glenford," I said. The village seemed peaceful despite the weather. Old stone buildings lined the wet streets, smoke curling from chimneys. A petrol station sign flickered in the gloom. We pulled into the station, the tires crunching on wet gravel. Claire hurried inside to fill the tank while I dashed through the rain to the nearby cafe. The warmth hit me like a wave as I stepped inside. The rich smell of coffee and chocolate filled the air. I ordered 2 cups of hot chocolate to go. Our elderly man sitting alone at a corner table looked up and smiled. "Storm's coming?" he said quietly. "Yes," I agreed, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "There's a murder mystery weekend at Blackwood Manor. Not a real murder, just actors playing roles." The man chuckled. "Ah, that old tradition. Brings a bit of excitement to the place. You'll need all the warmth you can get." I smiled back. "My mom's cooking for the guests. We're helping with the event." He nodded knowingly. That place has a way of getting under your skin, especially when the weather turns like this. I grabbed the drinks and ran back to the car. Claire was ready, and soon we were back on the road. The rain hammered down, the wind howled through the trees, and the world outside blurred into streaks of gray. "This weather's perfect for a murder mystery," Claire joked, though I heard the nervous edge in her voice. "Who do you think gets murdered first?" I asked, half smiling. She shrugged. "I don't know yet, but we better get there before the worst of the storm. Blackwood Manor isn't easy to reach, especially tonight." As the manor's dark silhouette appeared through the rain, a towering building with tall chimneys and glowing windows, I pulled my coat tighter around me. Excitement mixed with unease settled in my chest. Whatever awaited us, this weekend promised to be unforgettable. Chapter 2: Arrival at Blackwood Hall. The gravel driveway crunched beneath the tires as we approached Blackwood Hall. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle, but the air was thick with dampness and the scent of wet earth. Through the mist, the manor rose before us, an imposing stone building, its walls darkened by age and covered with creeping ivy. The tall chimneys reached into the gray sky like silent sentinels watching over the lonely estate. My mother parked beside a small weathered cottage near the main house. From the doorway stepped an older man with silver hair and a calm, tired face. Beside him stood a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. They greeted us warmly despite the gloomy weather. "Welcome to Blackwood Hall," the man said, his voice steady. "I'm Mr. Sullivan, and this is my wife, Margaret. We manage the property." Claire stepped out, shaking their hands. "I'm Claire Dawson, and this is my daughter, Emma. We're here to help with the preparations for the weekend event." Mr. Sullivan nodded. "We're glad to have you. It's been quiet here for a while, but this weekend will bring life back to the manor." I slipped out of the car, the cold air wrapping around me. The manor smelled of old wood and forgotten stories. I pulled my coat tighter as we followed Mr. Sullivan inside. The heavy wooden door creaked open, revealing a vast hallway dimly lit by a chandelier that hung high above. Dust floated lazily in the air, catching the pale light. The walls were lined with dark wooden panels, worn smooth by time, and the thick carpet muffled our footsteps. It felt as if the house itself was holding its breath. "This way," Mr. Sullivan said, leading us through an arched doorway into the dining room. The room was grand, with a long oak table stretching from one end to the other. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors watched us silently from the walls. A thick layer of dust covered much of the furniture, and the faded curtains hung heavy over tall windows. Margaret gestured toward the sitting room next door. "This is where most guests will relax. It's cozy, though a little worn around the edges." The room was filled with leather armchairs and bookcases sagging under the weight of countless volumes. A large fireplace dominated one wall, its hearth cold and empty. Claire smiled, though exhaustion shadowed her face. "It's beautiful, even if a little tired." We climbed a narrow staircase leading down to the kitchen. The room was smaller than I'd imagined, but full of character. The walls were chipped, and an enormous ancient stove stood at one end, its black iron surface covered with pots and pans. The counters were cluttered, but there was a feeling of warmth beneath the neglect. "This will be our domain," Claire said, trying to sound upbeat. "We have a lot to prepare before the guests arrive tonight." I walked over to a small window above the sink, peering out at the stone bridge just beyond the garden. The river rushed beneath it, swollen from the rain, its waters dark and restless. Mr. Sullivan handed Claire a set of old brass keys. "If you need anything, we're just in the cottage nearby. Don't hesitate to call on us." As they left, I took a deep breath. Blackwood Hall was a place of stories, some whispered, some forgotten, and I could feel their weight pressing down on the heavy beams and cracked walls. "Ready to get started?" Claire asked, looking at me with tired eyes. I nodded. Excitement, mixed with nerves, churned inside me. This weekend was about to begin, and I had a feeling it would be unlike anything I'd ever known. Chapter 3. The Players Assemble. The afternoon shadows grew longer as more guests began arriving at Blackwood Hall. The manor, which had seemed so silent earlier, was now filling with voices and footsteps echoing through its vast halls. I stood just inside the kitchen doorway, watching as a group of people gathered, each carrying their own air of mystery and excitement. First to enter was Vanessa, the leader of the acting troupe. She was tall and elegant, with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her voice was lively, even theatrical, as she greeted everyone with practiced charm. Dressed in a flowing dark coat and a striking red scarf, she carried herself like someone used to being the center of attention. Following her was Mark, a young man with a mischievous grin and quick hands. He juggled a few apples as he moved through the room, drawing laughter from the others. His easy humor broke the tension that had begun to settle on me, and for a moment, I forgot the weight of the old manor's walls. Then came Mr. Gray, quiet and watchful, his eyes shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. He said little but seemed to notice everything. I found myself wondering what stories he held behind that calm exterior. Jonathan Crane, the host of the weekend and the reason for our arrival, arrived shortly after. He was a tall man with silver hair and a confident smile, surrounded by close friends who looked equally at ease in the grand surroundings. Despite the jovial atmosphere, I sensed a tension beneath the surface, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. Claire introduced us to several of the guests as they came. In Susan, a graceful woman with an artist's delicate hands. Damien, a man with a calm voice and kind eyes. And Penelope, who seemed to watch everything with a hint of skepticism. The actors had already slipped into their roles. Vanessa declared with a flourish that she was Lady Redford, the manor's noble hostess. Mark pretended to trip over a chair, joking about his clumsy servant character. Mr. Gray took a quiet corner, playing the part of the mysterious stranger. I felt a thrill watching it all unfold. This was no ordinary party. It was a performance, a game of secrets and lies, and I was right in the middle of it. As the guests mingled, I noticed the painting above the fireplace, the one I had seen earlier. It showed a woman in a crimson dress, reclining with a serene yet haunting expression. The blood-red fabric contrasted sharply with the pale face and dark room behind her. It seemed to watch over the entire gathering, a silent witness to the coming weekend. Suddenly, a loud staged scream echoed through the hall, and the guests jumped, some laughing nervously, others catching their breath in surprise. The murder mystery had begun. Claire smiled at me. Remember, this is just a game. But sometimes, in a place like this, the line between fiction and reality can feel thin. I nodded, my heart pounding with anticipation. Whatever this weekend held, I knew it would change everything. Chapter 4. The First Evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Blackwood Hall began to transform. The fading daylight gave way to the warm, flickering glow of candles and chandeliers, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls lined with faded portraits and heavy tapestries. The manor's vast rooms, which had seemed so cold and empty during the day, suddenly felt alive with a strange kind of energy, half anticipation, half unease. Inside the kitchen, my mother, Claire, and I worked side by side, our movements steady, but full of quiet excitement. The air was thick with the rich aromas of roasting meats, herbs, and freshly baked bread. My hands trembled slightly as I arranged plates and poured wine, trying to focus but distracted by the weight of what was to come. The guests and actors began to gather in the dining room. They arrived dressed in their elegant costumes, men in dark suits, women in flowing gowns that shimmered softly in the candlelight. Vanessa, the troop leader, embodied her role as Lady Redford perfectly, radiating grace and confidence, while Mark, the young juggler, added a playful lightness, his antics drawing smiles and laughter despite the tension lingering beneath the surface. Mr. Gray, ever the enigma, stayed mostly on the edges, watching quietly, his sharp eyes missing nothing. Jonathan Crane, the host, welcomed everyone with a charm that seemed to mask a deep worry. His silver hair caught the light as he moved through the room, greeting friends and guests alike, trying to keep the atmosphere light and festive. I caught sight of the painting again, the haunting image of a woman in a crimson dress, lying serene, but unsettling above the fireplace. Its dark presence seemed to watch over the room, a silent reminder of the weekend's mysterious undertone. The blood-red fabric of her dress stood out starkly against the pale skin and shadowy background, and I felt an inexplicable chill every time I looked at it. Dinner was announced, and we took our places around the long oak table. The clinking of glasses and murmur of conversation filled the room as platters were passed and stories shared. My mother moved gracefully among the guests, ensuring everyone was attended to, while I helped where I could, feeling both a part of this grand gathering and somehow apart from it. The actors wove their story through the evening. Vanessa's voice took on a commanding tone as she revealed secrets and accusations in character. Mark's jokes and juggling kept the mood lively, though beneath his laughter lay a sharper edge. The guests leaned in, caught between amusement and genuine curiosity, eager to solve the murder mystery that was unfolding before them. Suddenly, a sharp scream echoed through the hall, a well-timed theatrical cry designed to startle and delight. The guests jumped, some laughing nervously, others clutching their glasses in surprise. The game was in full swing, yet even as the laughter spread, I couldn't shake the feeling that the manor itself was watching, that the line between performance and reality was growing thinner with every whispered secret and shadowed glance. Between serving plates and clearing dishes, I overheard snatches of conversation, hushed talks about old family secrets, long-held grudges, and strange happenings at Blackwood Hall over the years. The manor's history was alive tonight, wrapping around us like a thick, invisible cloak. My mother smiled tiredly but with pride. "This is only the beginning," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine. "There are more surprises to come." I nodded, my heart pounding with anticipation and a strange sense of foreboding. The first evening had set the stage. but the true drama was just beginning. Blackwood Hall had opened its doors, not just to guests, but to the secrets it had kept for so long. And as the night deepened, I knew there was no turning back. Chapter 5. A Missing Clue. The morning dawned cold and gray over Blackwood Hall, with a sky heavy and low, threatening more rain. Outside, the twisted branches of bare trees shivered in a chill wind that crept through the stone walls, carrying the scent of wet earth and forgotten secrets. Inside the manor, the air felt thick, heavy with unspoken tension, as if the house itself held its breath, waiting. I woke early, restless with thoughts that refused to settle. The echoes of last night's laughter and whispered accusations mingled with the dark image of the woman in the crimson dress from the painting. Slowly, I dressed and made my way to the dining room to prepare breakfast, hoping that the light of day might bring clarity. As I arranged the plates and cups on the long oak table, my eyes drifted instinctively toward the fireplace. My heart sank. The place where the painting had hung, so vivid and haunting, was now empty. The crimson dress, the pale face, the shadowy figure, all gone. A cold wave of panic rose inside me. My fingers trembled as I called for my mother. "Claire, the painting, it's missing. Someone took it." She appeared at my side quickly, her face pale as she surveyed the empty space. "Are you certain?" she asked, voice low but edged with alarm. "Yes. It was there last night, but now it's gone." Before we could think through what to do, the manor's uneasy silence was broken by Mr. Sullivan's arrival. His usually steady face was drawn tight with worry. "The road outside is closed," he announced gravely. "Ice has formed on the paths, and several trees have fallen, blocking any way in or out. No one can come or go until the storm clears." The news rippled through the manor like a cold wind. Guests and actors began to gather in the sitting room, their earlier excitement replaced by murmurs of fear and suspicion. The manor suddenly felt less like a place of entertainment and more like a trap. I found myself in the middle of the crowd, explaining what I had discovered. The painting, the centerpiece of the game, and perhaps the manor itself, is missing, I told them. It vanished overnight. Jonathan Crane's usual composure cracked for the first time. His brow furrowed deeply. "This is no accident. Someone here knew exactly what they were doing." A low murmur of agreement and apprehension swept the room. Penny stood abruptly, eyes flashing with anger. "Are you telling me the thief is still in this house? Among us?" Ed and Margaret exchanged uneasy glances before Ed spoke softly. "We searched all the rooms last night, trying to find anything else missing. But no other items have disappeared." The room was thick with tension. Brett tried to cut through the heaviness with a bitter joke. I always thought the only things haunting this place were ghosts. But the laughter was hollow. Jonathan's voice rang out, firm and commanding. I locked all the doors after dinner. No one could have entered or left without us noticing. Questions flew like sparks. Who could have done this? How? The trust that had held the group together began to fracture. Penny sank back into her seat, her face pale but resolute. If no one has come or gone, then it must be one of us. A heavy silence followed her words, as though the manor itself was holding its breath. Claire stepped forward, her voice steady but gentle. Let's not rush to judgment. We will get to the bottom of this together. But as I looked around the room, I realized that things had changed irreversibly. The weekend was no longer a game of make-believe. It was a real mystery with real consequences. And somewhere among us was a thief, hidden behind polite smiles and false friendliness. The painting's disappearance was only the beginning. Chapter 6. Secrets in the Shadows. The late afternoon light cast long, twisting shadows throughout Blackwood Hall, making the ancient walls seem to breathe with secrets. The silence was heavy, pressing down on everyone like an unspoken warning. I felt an urge to move quietly through the rooms, hoping to catch whispers of truths hidden beneath the surface. Truths the guests and caretakers might be reluctant to reveal. I started by talking to some of the guests and actors, looking for anything out of place, but most were careful with their words, keeping up the polite smiles and small talk. Yet beneath those smiles, I sensed unease. People avoided eye contact or changed the subject quickly when I brought up the painting. It was as if the missing artwork had unsettled everyone more than they let on. Margaret, the caretaker's wife, was the one who seemed most affected. When I asked her directly about the painting, she hesitated. Her eyes flickered with sadness and something deeper. Fear, perhaps? She looked away quickly and whispered, I haven't seen it. I don't know where it could be. But her voice wavered, and I felt she was holding back more than she admitted. Later, I spoke with Mr. Sullivan, who appeared more open but still cautious. He led me to a quiet corner of the cottage and pulled out a thick, leather-bound ledger. The pages were yellowed with age, filled with handwritten notes and meticulous lists of every possession in Blackwood Hall. Furniture, silverware, antiques, everything was catalogued with precision. My eyes scanned the pages until I found it. Murder in Moonlight, the missing painting's title. It was listed as a work by Isidore Richmond, a local artist whose reputation had grown after his recent death. The ledger noted the painting's estimated value was substantial, far beyond what anyone here had hinted. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was not a simple game anymore. Someone had stolen something valuable, and it was clear the stakes had risen dramatically. That evening, I found Claire in the kitchen. Her face was pale, the exhaustion visible in her eyes, but she carried a determination that matched my own. We sat silently for a few moments, the flickering candlelight casting soft shadows across the walls, punctuated only by the crackle of the fireplace. "This house," I said quietly, "it's full of more than just dust and memories. It's filled with secrets, deep ones, that people would do anything to keep hidden." Claire nodded slowly. "The past here doesn't stay buried. It waits for someone to uncover it, or sometimes for it to swallow them whole." I thought back to the way Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan had behaved, the guarded looks, the reluctance to speak freely. Were they trying to protect the manor's legacy, or were they hiding something darker? Were their actions driven by loyalty, fear, or guilt? Outside, the wind howled through the trees, rattling the windows and carrying whispers of things long forgotten. Shadows flickered across the hallways as the candle flames danced, seeming to watch me as I made my way through the house. The manor was alive with secrets, and I was caught in its grasp. I knew then that this weekend would be unlike any other. The mystery was no longer a simple game. It had become real, and the answers lay hidden in the shadows. Chapter 7: Whispers of Betrayal. The atmosphere in Blackwood Hall had shifted. What once was a gathering filled with excitement had turned into a tense, uneasy assembly. The missing painting was no longer just a curious mystery. It had opened a floodgate of suspicion and fear among everyone present. Behind the polished smiles and polite greetings, I sensed a growing undercurrent of distrust and hidden resentments. As I moved through the grand rooms, whispers followed me like shadows. Guests exchanged quiet comments in corners, stealing nervous glances at one another. It was clear that beneath the surface, old wounds were stirring, and the missing artwork was only the beginning. I found myself speaking with Damien, a thoughtful man whose calm demeanor barely masked his concern. "It's as if the manor itself is holding its breath," he said in a low voice. "We're all walking on thin ice, not knowing who might break first." Nearby, Vanessa, the troop's leader, held a small, intense conversation with Susan and Penelope. Her usual theatrical flair had given way to a sharper edge. I overheard fragments of their talk, mentions of past betrayals, broken promises, and rivalries buried beneath years of silence. Vanessa's eyes narrowed as she spoke of debts owed, grievances held close, and secrets that could destroy lives if revealed. Penelope, always watchful, appeared to be piecing together gossip and hints, her gaze sharp and calculating. She mentioned Brett's name quietly, linking him to a long-standing business feud with one of the guests. Brett, who had once seemed jovial and easygoing, now smiled with a cold, guarded look, his laughter no longer reaching his eyes. Mark, the troupe's juggler, tried to inject some levity, but even his jokes sounded forced and strained. Pulling me aside, he admitted in a hushed tone, "There's more here than just a missing painting. People are hiding things, dark things, old grudges, secrets, maybe even betrayals." His words echoed the unease I felt myself. It was clear that the game unfolding here was more tangled and dangerous than I had imagined. This was no longer a simple murder mystery played out for entertainment. It was a clash of hidden histories and simmering resentments. Later, curiosity led me to follow Mr. Gray when he slipped away from the group. I watched as he entered the dusty library, closing the door softly behind him. The dim light revealed shelves lined with ancient books and forgotten papers. Mr. Gray approached an ornate desk and pulled open a concealed drawer, revealing a bundle of brittle letters tied with a faded ribbon. I glimpsed hurried handwriting filled with words like deception, revenge, and broken trust. Each letter seemed to breathe with pain and anger, hinting at a story far darker than anyone had let on. My heart raced as I realized the painting's theft was just one piece of a larger tangled web, one that involved betrayal, secrets, and dangerous alliances woven through the manor's history. Back in the main hall, Claire caught my eye and drew me aside. Her expression was grave as she whispered, "Be careful who you trust here. Sometimes the greatest danger comes from those closest to you." The flickering candlelight threw restless shadows on the walls, seeming to listen to our whispered fears. Blackwood Hall was no longer just a backdrop for a weekend game. It was a place where the past whispered threats, and every secret carried a price. And I was caught right in the middle of it all. Chapter 8. Nightfall Intruders. Night had fallen heavily over Blackwood Hall. The storm that had threatened us earlier had finally passed, leaving the world outside slick and quiet under a shroud of darkness and mist. But inside the ancient manor, the air was thick with unease, a silent tension that seemed to seep from the very walls themselves. I lay awake in my room, staring at the ceiling, the flickering shadows from my candle dancing eerily on the walls. My mind was restless, spinning with everything that had happened over the last few days. The stolen painting, whispered accusations, hidden letters hinting at old grudges. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching me, waiting for something to happen. Unable to remain still, I quietly slipped out of bed. The wooden floorboards creaked softly beneath my feet as I tiptoed down the long, dimly lit corridor. I pulled my coat tighter around me. The chill from the stone walls seeped through even the thickest fabric. I was heading toward the kitchen, craving a warm drink to calm my nerves, when suddenly a faint beam of light cut through the darkness ahead. A flashlight. My heart stopped. Someone else was moving through the manor in the dead of night. I pressed myself against the cold wall, breath caught in my throat. The beam of light swung slowly, searching the shadows, pausing briefly near the stairwell, before flickering toward the kitchen. I crept silently, staying just out of sight, watching as the figure opened the refrigerator door. The soft creak echoed unnervingly in the stillness. I could see only the outline, a tall shape dressed in dark clothes, moving carefully as if trying not to be noticed. Suddenly, the flashlight's beam swept in my direction. I gasped as the light hit me, momentarily blinded. The figure turned sharply, and a strong hand grabbed my arm, pulling me into the shadows. Panic surged through me. I twisted and kicked, fighting to break free. The figure stumbled backward, crashing into a wooden chair that toppled with a loud crash. The flashlight flew across the floor, its beam spinning wildly, throwing frantic shadows against the walls. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice shaking but steady. Before the figure could respond, a familiar voice echoed through the corridor. "Emma, are you okay?" Relief washed over me as Mark, the jovial juggler from the acting troupe, appeared, holding a candle that flickered in the darkness. The intruder hesitated, then bolted down the hall, disappearing into the night's embrace. Mark dashed after him but returned after a few moments, breathless and frustrated. "I couldn't catch him," he said, eyes dark with concern. I sank into a nearby chair, my hands trembling. Why was he here? What did he want? Mark shook his head. "I don't know, but I found this." He held up a small mobile phone, still lit but silent. Curious and anxious, I took the phone and examined it. The screen showed several saved contacts. One caught my eye, labeled simply Jonathan C. My fingers trembled as I dialed the number, heart pounding in my chest. The line rang out. After several rings, a sleepy voice answered. "Hello? Clive? Is that you?" I whispered. There was a pause, then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, 1,000 questions flooding my mind. Clive, the guest who was supposed to have left the manor hours ago, had somehow returned. And now, he was the prime suspect in this deepening mystery. Night at Blackwood Hall was no longer just dark. It was dangerous. I knew that from this moment on, nothing would be the same. Shadows had shifted, secrets had come alive, and the weekends, game had turned into something far more real and far more threatening. Chapter 9. The Truth Unfolds. The morning broke with a dull, heavy sky, the kind that presses down on everything beneath it. Outside, the rain fell softly, pattering against the windows of Blackwood Hall like a persistent reminder of the storm that still lingered, both outside and inside the walls of this old manor. The atmosphere was thick with tension, one that no amount of daylight could seem to wash away. Inside the grand sitting room, the air was cold, despite the fire burning low in the hearth. Guests and actors sat scattered around the room, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. The usual hum of polite conversation was replaced by nervous whispers and stolen glances. Every pair of eyes seemed to hold suspicion. Every silence weighted with unspoken fears. Jonathan Crane stood near the fireplace, his posture rigid, eyes scanning the faces before him. His usual confident smile was gone, replaced by a seriousness that made even the shadows seem to lean in. This weekend was meant to be a celebration, he said quietly, voice steady but heavy with disappointment. A game to entertain us. But the lines between fantasy and reality have been crossed, and it has shaken us all. Vanessa, the troop's leader, stepped forward. Her usual commanding presence was softened by concern. "We've played our parts well," she said, "but now the story we're part of is very real. It's time to face what's truly happening here." Susan, seated near the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap, added softly, "Whoever took the painting knew exactly what it was worth. This was no simple theft. It was personal." Brett, the businessman, let out a low chuckle that held no humor. "There's too much at stake here," he muttered. "Old debts, grudges, alliances formed and broken in shadows. We all have reasons to want something from Blackwood Hall." Damien, leaning forward with intensity in his eyes, spoke with quiet force. "We've been dancing around the truth for too long. Now it's time to lay it bare. Our fears, our secrets, our motives. Only then can we find the person responsible." A heavy silence fell as all eyes turned toward Ed and Margaret, the caretakers of the manor. Their faces were drawn, betraying. The weight of sleepless nights and secrets kept too long. Ed spoke first, his voice low and regretful. "I wish I could say we didn't know more, but this house, it's full of stories, dark stories, things we've kept hidden, hoping they would stay buried." Margaret nodded, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. "Some secrets are poison. They spread quietly, damaging everyone around them. We wanted to protect the manor, but perhaps we've only protected ourselves." I swallowed hard, feeling the pieces of the puzzle coming together in my mind. The letters I had seen with Mr. Gray, the whispered betrayals, the old rivalries, they weren't just background noise. They were the key to understanding what was happening now. Jonathan's gaze shifted to me, expectant. "Emma," he said, "you've been observing quietly. What can you tell us? What have you uncovered?" Taking a deep breath, I recounted what I had found: the ledger detailing the manor's treasures, the painting's true value, and the letters filled with anger, deception, and revenge. I spoke of the atmosphere of fear, the hidden grudges, and the growing danger lurking beneath polite smiles. "There's more here than just a missing painting," I said firmly. "There's a tangled history of betrayal, and that history is pulling us into something far more dangerous than any game." Vanessa stepped closer, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "Then it's time," she declared, "to face the truth, no matter where it leads, to uncover every secret, reveal every lie." The room seemed to hold its breath, the flickering candle flames casting long, restless shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind howled against the windows as if urging us forward, daring us to uncover what the manor was hiding. The truth was no longer hidden. It was close, dangerous, and waiting to be revealed. And none of us would ever be the same. Chapter 10. Dawn of Resolution. The first pale light of dawn seeped slowly through the heavy curtains of Blackwood Hall, casting soft golden streaks across the worn wooden floors and the faded wallpaper. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and crisp, but the weight of the past days still hung thickly in the old manor. Silence settled, broken only by the distant calls of waking birds and the gentle rustling of leaves in the cool morning breeze. I stood by the tall window in my room, watching as mist drifted lazily over the gardens and the stone pathways gleamed, wet with dew. For the first time since arriving, the manor felt less like a prison of secrets and more like a place slowly waking from a restless sleep. Yet, the memories of the stolen painting, the whispered accusations, and the tense confrontations lingered in my mind like shadows refusing to fade. Slowly, the others began to stir. The great hall filled with the soft footsteps and quiet murmurs of those who had stayed the night. Faces were weary, lined with exhaustion and the traces of worry. But in their eyes, I saw a spark of resolve, a shared understanding forged through the trials we had faced together. Jonathan Crane stood at the head of the room, his usually confident posture tempered with a new humility. He cleared his throat and spoke, his voice steady but tinged with sincerity. This weekend was meant to be a game, a celebration, but it has become so much more. It has tested us, our trust in one another, our courage, and the truth we choose to face. The past cannot be erased, but it can be confronted. Vanessa, ever the leader, nodded beside him, her eyes shining with a mix of relief and determination. We played our parts well, but the real story was the one hidden beneath our masks. The secrets we uncovered of this house and of ourselves have changed everything. I glanced around at the gathered group, actors, guests, caretakers, all of us connected now by the events that had unfolded. The suspicion and fear that had once wrapped the manor in a suffocating grip had begun to lift, replaced by something fragile but hopeful. Ed, the caretaker, spoke next, his voice quieter but filled with meaning. Blackwood Hall has seen centuries of stories, joys and sorrows, betrayals and forgiveness. This weekend reminded us that while the past shapes us, it does not have to define us. There is still room here for new beginnings. Margaret smiled softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We will work to restore this house, not just the walls and floors, but its spirit. It deserves that much. The room was filled with a warmth that the crackling fire alone could not provide. I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me, mingling with the quiet excitement of a future unwritten. Yet I knew the lessons of Blackwood Hall would stay with me forever. The stolen painting was more than a prized possession. It was a symbol, a reminder of the secrets we keep, the shadows we hide from, and the courage it takes to bring those secrets into the light. As the morning sun rose higher, spilling golden light through the stained glass windows, I realized that Blackwood Hall, with all its mysteries and ghosts, had become a part of me. This ancient house had taught me about trust, about facing the unknown, and about finding strength in unexpected places. With the dawn came resolution, but also a new beginning. The story of Blackwood Hall was far from over. It would live on in the hearts of those who had walked its halls, in the whispered stories told by the wind, and in the quiet courage of a girl who dared to uncover the truth. And as I stepped outside, into the fresh morning air, I felt ready. Ready to face whatever came next, knowing that even in the darkest places, light can always be found. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.